Hello beautiful souls, it's Reverend Chris. I'm making this video actually on Palm Sunday, which is the week before Easter Sunday. But I already did my video on that, so you would know about it ahead of time if you wanted to look up scriptures or didn't know quite what it was. And that leads us into our next Bible lesson, which is about our Good Friday. This year Good Friday is on Friday the 25th. I am excited to talk about this because it's a really interesting story and also very sad. And Easter, I always say Christians are Easter people because that is kind of why we're Christians, and all of these Bible lessons up to Easter lead up to our beliefs. So as far as following Christ. So I'm using the Catholic Bible today. I'm going to be using this all through our Easter lessons and then probably jump around a little bit. But most of our story today takes place in the book of Mark. And as you know, that's one of the Gospels. The four Gospels talk about Jesus Christ's life. That's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And our Christmas story, of course, starts in the first book of Matthew, which is the day Jesus was born. We're going to talk about Mark a lot today. And I'm going to give you a couple extra scriptures just in case you want to look at other parts of the Bible. After the four Gospels, they talk about Christ quite a bit through the rest of the Bible, the New Testament. And some of those are really helpful too if you're trying to learn more about the story of either Easter, Good Friday, any of the holidays around this time, Lent. All right, so I just want to make a couple personal comments about this story. Basically, a lot of people don't understand a few things about Jesus. He was an actual human being, man on earth, but he was also fully divine, which means he had powers like God, but he was also a man, so he was both. And so he always kind of knew, and if you read the Bible, you can see he knew really that what he had to do to save everyone. He knew that he would have to give himself to die. He knew that he would go through ridicule. He knew that he would probably be tortured. Anytime in those times, if you went against the king or called yourself Messiah or God over the king, you probably were not going to have a good ending, and he pretty much knew that. We're going to talk about a term called crucifixion, which means that's what it's called, the act of nailing somebody's hands and feet to a cross and hanging them, and they're basically, all of their weight is on their hands and feet that they're nailed to. It's very painful. And I'm not going to read everything. I'm just going to read some key things because it is a very long story. Different translations say that they beat Jesus and he didn't even look like a man afterward before they hung him on the cross. And he did know all of this was coming. He foreshadowed to it several times when he'd do teachings. But he actually, people don't realize this, because he was fully divine and he could perform miracles, he probably could get out of it if he didn't want to go through that physical pain. He chose to give himself for us, so we would have everlasting life. We'd be able to go to heaven, be forgiven for our sins. He had these powers and was deemed sinless. He didn't ever do anything hateful to anyone. He didn't commit or go against any of the 10 Commandments. It's a really interesting, his life, that he was kind of fully man, fully divine. He probably could have chosen not to do these things, but they kind of had to be done for us to save us from ourselves, to save our souls. So I'm going to start off in Mark 8:31 through 33. And 31 says, "He began to teach them that the Son of Man had to suffer much, to be rejected by elders, the chief priests, the scribes, to be put to death, to rise again 3 days later." And number 32 says, "He said these things quite openly. Peter then took him aside to begin." He kind of wanted to ask him more about it. I'm going to just make it shorter. This is very long. All right, and so Jesus says to Peter in 33, "Get out of my sight, you Satan. You are not judging by God's standards, you're judging by man." So basically, Jesus says, "Look, I know the future, I know what I must do." And Peter's like, "You don't have to do that, and I'm kind of questioning, how do you know this is all going to happen?" And he's saying, don't even go there. So he knew what he had to do from kind of the start, and he knew it was kind of the beginning of the end on Palm Sunday, which is technically we're celebrating today, this year. All right, so then we go to Mark 14, number 48 and 49. 48 says, and this is Jesus's words because it's in red, "You have come out to arrest me with armed with swords and clubs against me. I was within your reach daily, teaching in the temple precincts, yet you never arrested me. But now, so the scriptures may be fulfilled." So he's saying you had like plenty of opportunities before he was arrested, finally to be crucified later. You thought I was all cool in the gang last week when I was teaching in your temples and performing miracles, but now suddenly the king and the priests aren't happy. Now I'm suddenly a criminal. Now you're coming to me with weapons. And so he's kind of calling him out, and then he does like foreshadow the future again, and he's saying you're going to fulfill the scriptures now. So he knew it was coming. It sounds like he wasn't quite sure it was going to be exactly at that moment, which is really interesting. So that was Mark 14, 48, and 49. And then I'm going to skip to Mark 15, 25. You can read all of this. It's really sad, all the things they do to him, like the ridicule. They didn't give him a fair trial. It's like very long. So I'm getting to the really Good Friday moments. It's sad that we call it Good Friday because they actually tortured and put him on the cross that day. So that's really what Good Friday is. So Good Friday. Mark 15, 25 says, "It was about 9 in the morning when they crucified him. The inscription proclaiming his offense said, 'King of the Jews.'" So what they were saying is they charged him with calling himself the King of the Jews, and it was kind of like they put a sign up on the cross they were crucifying him on saying what he did. Now, back in those days when they crucified you, it was a public display of this is what's going to happen when you do something illegal or do something morally wrong or whatever they were arrested for and put on the cross for. So like it could have said you're a rapist on your cross. It could have said, you murdered, you stole, whatever it may be. And there was 2 other people next to him during his crucifixion. So number 27 says, "With him they crucified 2 insurgents, one at the right and one at the left." And then it talks about how people would walk by because it was a public display. And this is very painful to be hung on this cross, nails through your hands and feet. And people were ridiculing him, screaming insults at him, and that all goes on through the whole book of Mark. And then I'm skipping ahead to Mark 37 through 39. I'm sorry, Mark 15, 37 through 39, a little ways down. Wow, I think I'm getting off track today. Okay, it says, "A few bystanders who heard the remarks," so Jesus just before this had said, "God, why have you forsaken me?" in the Hebrew language, because he was hurting, but he knew kind of why he had to do this too. So it's kind of like a back and forth. As a man, the part of him that was human, of course, was suffering. So the few bystanders said, "Listen, he is calling Elijah." Someone ran off with a soaking sponge in sour wine and stuck it on a reed to let him take a drink. And the man said, "Now, let's see whether Elijah comes to take you down." So somebody offered him some wine to drink, but then was still making fun of him, which is kind of crazy to think about. And then it says, "Then Jesus, uttering a loud cry, breathed his last. In that moment, the curtain of the sanctuary was torn from the top and bottom in 2. So they're saying there was a temple with a sanctuary with a curtain in front of it. The minute Jesus stopped breathing, the last breath he took, that curtain split in half through the middle. And this was like a sign to everyone in the town to say, "Oh my gosh, there's something, he was the Messiah." So let me read it again. I kind of messed it up. I apologize. It says, "Then Jesus uttered a loud cry, breathed his last. At that moment, the curtain at the sanctuary was torn in 2 from top to bottom." And then number 39 says, "The centurion who stood guard over him, on seeing in manner of the death, declared, 'Clearly this man is the Son of God.'" So they had a guard, standing guard, they called the centurion guard, and he proclaimed when he saw that happen, when Jesus stopped breathing, obviously this is the Son of God. So I think people really who were questioning at that point why, if he's the Son of God, is he hanging up there? Why is he letting himself go through this? If he's like all magical and powerful, if this is really the Messiah, how is he doing this? And that was the first symbol that he was really the Son of God. So the next story is going to be, or the next Bible study is going to be the story of Easter, which is 3 days after this happened. And that's quite a moving story as well. Just remember that Jesus did all of this willingly for us. Some other verses you can refer to if you think this is very interesting are in Isaiah number 53:5, Romans number 5, 6 through 10, and then 1 Peter 2:24. So I hope that that helped you understand what Good Friday is about. It's a very somber story. If you read all of it, you can see how much they physically tortured him and verbally abused and ridiculed him. The people in the town, the priests, the king, everyone. So it was really sad, but thank you that he did that, because we're all sinners and we wouldn't have everlasting life in heaven once we pass away without that. So I love you all. I hope you're having a wonderful week this week, and I look forward to doing your Easter lessons soon. You can always give a donation of $1 or more on Patreon if you like these videos. You can send me a free anonymous prayer request by email at freeprayerlove@aol.com, or you can like, share, subscribe, and comment anytime. Have a blessed week.